Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network. Like and subscribe on YouTube at Stillman and Co. We will not have a show tomorrow, so today is a Thursday and a Friday all wrapped into one. So we're very, very excited about that. Number one, how about them Toronto Blue Jays last night? That's right. The Jays going back to Rogers Center, up 3-2. Trey Yesevich went out there and absolutely outpitched Blake Snell. How about them Blue Jays? And so, again, I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, but the Blue Jays are my second team because Lindsay's from Toronto, and that's her team. And so we're rooting for the Blue Jays, and good luck to them tomorrow night. We are presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. You know we love Hiller. They take great care of me, and they'll do the exact same for you. Okay. The trade deadline is less than a month away. And as I said on the program yesterday, the NFL's trade deadline, it's very peculiar because when it comes to the NFL's trade deadline, they want you to believe, the media companies, everything else, they want you to believe that the NFL's trade deadline is like hockey's trade deadline or like baseball's trade deadline or like basketball's trade deadline, where Kevin Durant is going to get shipped out, where big names are going to fly off the shelves, and that we're going to look back one day and say, man, the Detroit Tigers traded away John Smoltz at the trade deadline because they were going for it. The NFL is rarely like that when it comes to the trade deadline. I mean, I remember when Mohamed Sanu a couple of years ago went at the trade deadline for a second-round pick. And like that today would be an earth-shattering trade. If Minnesota were to try to take Justin Jefferson to the market, I don't know if they would get a second-round pick because for some reason teams are very, very stingy when it comes to trading picks at around the deadline. You get to March, teams will trade picks. You get to the draft, teams will trade picks. You get to the trade deadline, and for some reason teams won't trade picks. And the one thing I don't get about that is I don't understand why teams are so unwilling to trade picks when, as the coach and the GM, you may not be here next year to use those draft picks. But we talk about the Titans and the fact that the Titans have made their intentions well known. They've told every insider what they're going to do, and they showed you on Monday with the Roger McCreary trade exactly what their philosophy is going to be. We're not going to trade away Jeffery Simmons, but anybody else on the roster is up for grabs. They're not going to trade away Skoronski. They're not going to trade away J.C. Latham. They're going to trade away veterans on expiring contracts whom they don't believe they have a big use for down the road. So what is the value? Because again, Roger McCreary went for a 6th round to the 5th round pick swap. Now, that is a humongous jump from the bottom of the 6th, where the Titans expected to be, to the top of the 5th. And when you factor in the math, that is a mid-5th round pick in value, which is probably what people would think Roger McCreary's value is, though I value Roger McCreary a little bit higher. So I took the players we think the Titans are going to trade, and I reached out to my friends at Sumer Sports. I don't know if you remember Sumer Sports, the analytics company Thomas Dimitrov used to be the CEO of. We had Sam Brookhouse, who's one of their lead guru analysts on at the Super Bowl. He told us that their analytics said Jackson Dart good, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders bad. And I said to my friends at Sumer Sports, I said, can you guys give me trade comps? And I asked in the most specific terms, what are the players worth? Now, Sumer Sports actually has an AI platform that is free to use. It's called Sumer Brain. You just have to sign up, and you can ask it football questions. And unlike ChatGPT, it's a little bit, I'd say it's significantly more reliable as far as answering your football questions are concerned. But this, I reached out to the Sumer Brain, but also to the Sumer Sports people, because this may be some classified information they have there. And I said, give me the worth. If I'm the Titans and I am looking to trade off pieces that I know aren't going to be on the team next year, that may have value elsewhere, what are they actually worth? And the list I gave them was Chig Okonkwo, Tony Pollard, Dre'Mont Jones, Xavier Woods, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Arden Key. They're not going to trade Jeffery Simmons, and the asking price for Simmons would probably be more than what his expected value would be in a trade. So forget about Simmons for a second. Yes, I think they should trade Simmons. Yes, I know that the Titans said they weren't going to trade A.J. Brown, and they traded A.J. Brown. Yes, I know the Cowboys said they weren't going to trade Micah Parsons, and they traded Micah Parsons. The first step to trading a star player is to say you're not going to trade the star player. I get that, but I don't think they're going to be trading Simmons. So again, the list: Chig, Tony Pollard, Dre'Mont Jones, Xavier Woods, Sebastian Joseph Day, Arden Key. So here's what the Sumer brain, the Sumer analytics bring up as far as the value of the trade packages could be worth. And the one thing that they stressed to me was this does not account for other players being involved in a trade or pick swaps. For instance, you could deal somebody with a fourth and get a low third in return or whatever. Chig Okonkwo, number one, former fourth-round pick, Titans starting tight end now for his third year. Chig Okonkwo has a value of a fifth-round pick. So if you were to make a deal and somebody were looking for a tight end, the reasonable expectation for Chig would be a fifth-round pick. Tony Pollard. Sumer Sports says the reasonable expectation on a return for Tony Pollard is a fifth-round pick. So a fifth-rounder for Chig, a fifth-rounder for Tony Pollard. Dre'Mont Jones. Now, Dre'Mont Jones has had a sack in each of his last 3 games, and I thought that meant that, hey, there may be a chance Dre'Mont Jones could fetch something for a team-leading pass rush. 6th round. So not a massive haul there. Xavier Woods, 7th round. Arden Key, 6th round. Now, again, that's the value. That doesn't mean that the Titans can't get something a little bit better by sending in a pick as part of a pick swap, whatever it may be. But those are the expected values of the people that I think we can all agree the Titans are looking to trade according to Sumer Sports. Chig is a 5th. Tony Pollard is a 5th. Dre'Mont Jones and Arden Key are 6s, and Xavier Woods is a 7th. So here's how I'd approach this deadline if I were the Titans. And keep in mind, if a team wants a player bad enough, maybe they'll turn around and offer you a better pick. I didn't expect Ernest Jones to go for a 4th-round pick last year, and the Titans have Gunnar Helm on their football team because of the Ernest Jones trade. But here's what I would do, assuming those are the values for the players. Because I need to remind everybody, it is incredibly unlikely to rebuild your team with a bunch of 5th and 6th round picks. I actually looked it up today. I went back to the Titans-Bengals playoff game, and I pulled up the starting lineups for each team. And for the Titans, guys that they picked on day 3 of the draft that were starting players, and I'm not accounting for Tannehill, whom they used a 4th-round pick for, or a guy like Jeff Swaim, who I don't even know where he went in the draft, but he had been around the league as a friend. I'm talking about starting players that you picked. David Long in the 6th, Amani Hooker in the 4th. That's it. Everybody else was a day 1 or day 2 pick. So here's how I would approach the deadline if I were the Titans. Number 1, I would aim for 2027 picks over 2026 picks. Reason why, there is a rule of thumb that if you draft a year out, if you trade for a pick a year out, you jump around, since you'd have to wait a year to access that pick. So if I were to say to you, what would you rather have, a 2027 4th or a 2026 5th? If your real mantra is patience and draft, develop, and retain, then I would say you're better off with a 2027 4th. In fact, what the Eagles do is they take picks in future drafts and then deal them back a year. So for instance, they will take a 4th-round pick in this year's draft. And when somebody calls on the day of the draft and they say, we would love to have that 4th rounder, the Eagles will say, okay, we'll give you the 4th and a 6th, but you got to give us a 3rd. And now they've just acquired a top 100 pick by trading out a year. So that's the first thing I would do. The first thing I would do is I would be looking for 2027 picks more so than 2026 picks. Now, if somebody's going to offer me a 4th and 26, then that's great. I'll take it. But I'm just of the mindset that you're better off looking at further picks down the road if you truly believe in draft, develop, and retain. If you truly believe that Mount Amy is not going to just erupt and fire your ass, then 2027 could be the focus here. And by the way, PK had a rundown of this. The Titans right now have picks in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 3 6s, and 1 7th. Do you need 4 6s? Again, if you were to trade Dre'Mont Jones and Arden Key for their values of each 6th-round picks, then you'd have 5 6-rounders. I'm not sure you necessarily need that. The second thing I want to point out, again, Sumer Sports telling us the values of Chig Okonkwo, Tony Pollard, Dre'Mont Jones, Xavier Woods, Arden Key. 5th, 5th, 6th, 6th, 7th. The total value, and this is an expected value because you don't know who you'd be trading with, so you don't know exactly where in the round it would be picked. But the expected value for all 5 of those players, Chig, Pollard, Jones, Woods, Key, is that of a high 4th-round pick. So think of Chimere DK, because that's what Chimere DK was. He was a high 4th-round pick. So again, when the Titans were good, 2 guys were drafted by the Titans on day 2. David Long and Amani Hooker. Long story short, there's no real value other than just some lottery tickets and maybe some drywall that you can pick up by selling at this year's trade deadline, unless you think that getting 4 or 5 scratch-offs in your stocking at Christmas is going to give you a shot at being a millionaire. And this takes me really to the bigger issue that I have with Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi and what they've stressed to us over their year or so running the Titans. And that is, what is the plan? What is the plan to rebuild this roster? Go back to last year when there was somewhat of a clean slate. Yes, you had Brian Callahan in as the coach, but for the most part, it felt like a clean slate. You had the number 1 pick in the draft. You were not set at quarterback one way or another. You had a willing taker for the picks that you needed to help rebuild your team, but you turned that down because you wanted to draft the quarterback. Okay, cool. Then you didn't spend much in free agency because you're draft, develop, and retain. But you didn't have a lot of good premium picks last year. And the guys that you had drafted that looked like young core players for the team, like Jarvis Brownlee or Tavondre Sweat, apparently aren't culture fits. So you got to cross them out. Guys that were young picks that need to be a part of the team's future, like J.C. Latham, have not developed the way I think people would want them to. Femi Oladejo, Kevin Winston hasn't played. And so what is the plan to support Cam Ward next year? Again, 1 pick in the 1st round, 1 pick in the 2nd round, 1 pick in the 3rd round. If you're hell-bent on keeping Jeffery Simmons, it's because you think you can have a competitive ball club next year or the year after that. So what's your plan to bring in pass rushers to put around Simmons so that you can get to the quarterback? Again, you don't have to be the 85 Bears next year, but you do need to get teams off the field in the first half on 3rd down. Like, you do need to be able to sack the quarterback. You do need to be able to keep the other team's best players the way Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman went off on you last week. You need to keep that from happening. As of right now, the Titans have the 26th ranked defense in the NFL. You need pass rushers to keep that from happening next year. So what's the plan to get pass rushers? Well, Jared, we're going to draft Reuben Bain out of Miami in the 1st round. Okay, well, now what's the plan to get wide receivers? Because you just used your 1st pick there, so the wide receiver from Arizona State can't take him. And then the other thing that we haven't talked a lot about, but the Titans have got to keep an eye on this, is, remember, Chad Brinker is a Moneyball guy. And it was his words, not mine, that when talking about Moneyball, he said, the key is market inefficiencies. Well, the Titans are overpaying guys like Lloyd Cushenberry at center and Calvin Ridley at receiver, whom, if you're a market inefficiency guy, might want to cut those players this upcoming year. But if you cut Lloyd Cushenberry, and I agree, Lloyd Cushenberry's performance does not equal his salary. I never thought Lloyd Cushenberry was that good. I thought Tyler Biadasz was the better free agent center when he was available out of Dallas. He signed with Washington. I thought he was the more accomplished free agent center. Cushenberry was bigger. Bill Callahan wants the bigger guy. But if you get rid of Lloyd Cushenberry, now you have to go find a starting center. So on top of the number 2 receiver you need to go get to pair with Calvin Ridley and Chimere Dike in the slot, and the tight end you have to go get because you need a starting tight end, and the right guard you have to get to replace Kevin Zeitler, now you have to get a center to replace Lloyd Cushenberry. If you trade away Tony Pollard, now you have to go get a running back to go work with Tajay Spears, although Hassan Haskins would be a great fit to be the 1-2 punch with Spears, but I digress. You got rid of him for nothing. And that's before we even get to the defense, and we wonder who's going to play defensive back. So I'm aware of the fact that no general manager in the NFL, I've sat down with plenty of them over the years, active general managers, active head coaches who had personnel control, which is essentially a general manager. And I have sat down with them and I have asked them questions about their team and their plans and picks and things. And no general manager is going to tell you or me or anybody straight up what their plan is. So you have to watch with your eyes and you have to watch the plan materialize and then go from there. When Mike Mularkey and John Robinson said, we're going to be a tough physical football team, and they went out and drafted Jack Conklin, and they signed Ben Jones, and they traded for DeMarco Murray, they were telling you right there, what we said we were going to do, we're going to do here. When you say draft, develop, retain, and then you trade away Jarvis Brownlee for a bag of footballs, you're not really doing what you say your plan is. When you say you want 12 top 100 picks over 3 drafts, and then you turn down the pick from the Giants for Cam Ward, well, you're not really doing what you said. So when it comes to watching their plan over the course of a year, I guess I just don't see it. I don't understand it. Because in order to rebuild a football team, you need good players and premium picks. And I'm not sure where the good players from premium picks are going to come from when, again, all your players that you're looking to deal at the trade deadline are worth 5th and 6th round picks. Well, we're not going to trade Jeffery Simmons. Well, that's how you get premium picks, is by dealing good players. So I don't understand. Maybe I'm not smart enough. I know a lot of people have assumed that over the years. Maybe you're right. You probably are. But I don't see the plan. Do you see the plan? Where they're going to get these premium picks from? Well, we'll trade it this year. Well, number one, you have to have a dance partner this year. And you don't know, are you going to be picking first, second, third? Is there going to be somebody who gives a haul for Carlos Mendoza? Fernando Mendoza? Maybe. There probably will be. And then maybe that's how you rebuild your team. But that's tough to bank on right now, watching Brinker and Borgonzi run this team. So that's the first thing. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I absolutely love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. Of happy you'll be here, the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that is performed, my friends at Hiller will make it right. I know this because I use Hiller at my home. That's right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Care is their core value, where my friends at Hiller believe that, you know what, if we care about our clients on every visit, they will keep using Hiller. And that's, in fact, what's happened to me. I use Hiller. They come in, they get the job done, they leave. And they don't come back because they don't have to. That's why I love Hiller. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the National Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, topic number 2. We need to have an honest conversation here because I got a tweet that drove me crazy this morning. And it's driving me insane right now as far as the discourse of the state of the Titans is concerned. And that is the discussion surrounding the quarterback, Cam Ward. So I know. I didn't want to draft Cam Ward. I know. People are going to say, well, if you didn't want to draft Cam Ward, then you're not going to like Cam Ward now, so maybe you should. Again, I try to be as fair as possible. I didn't want to draft Derrick Henry. They had DeMarco Murray on the roster. I felt like they had more holes. They drafted Derrick Henry. I said, what are you doing? And obviously it was a good pick. Let the big dog eat. But what drives me crazy is how dishonest I feel like a lot of Titans fans are being, not only to other Titans fans, not only to people like me, but to themselves when it comes to Cam Ward. This is a tweet I got today. This came from Howie the Titan, who says, quote, "It's been a good first year. Yes, so far for Cam Ward. He's mostly sustained and gained believers in himself as a QB1. Pretty much everyone I've seen supports that view of him, except Jared Stillman." Now, can I ask by what metric, Howie, are we using to say that Cam Ward has gained believers in him as QB1? But what drives me crazy is I read a tweet like that and I'm like, wait a minute. What? I understand being able to blame other people for why Cam Ward hasn't been good this year. But to say that Cam Ward has been good this year, how did we get there? So I want to be completely fair. And I want to try to be as honest as possible with with as limited amount of bias as I can humanly muster. Again, I know I was Sam over Cam, which, by the way, I think I've been proven right on, but that's okay. I was Sam over Cam. But I'm going to try to be completely fair when assessing Cam Ward's rookie season so far. I think Cam has had some really impressive moments as a quarterback in the NFL. The throw to Io Manor for the touchdown against the Rams. The first 2 drives and the big touchdown to Chimere DK against the Patriots. I thought he played a composed game in his first start on the road at Denver, which is very hard to do. And Cam Ward does show us consistently, about once a game, that he has the ability to make some special plays. He threw a ball across his body to Io Manor in the Texan game that was a wow play, and then followed it up with a borderline Will Levis-like mistake. But Cam Ward has not been consistent, and he has not been a winning player in 2025. Now, before you start yelling and screaming, but Jared, is it possible that Cam Ward isn't a winning player right now because his team sucks so bad? Yeah, it's possible. Is it possible that Cam Ward isn't a winning player right now because his coach was a bozo and sucks so bad? Yeah, it's possible. But it also is possible that Cam Ward might not be a winning player because he might not be good enough. It might be possible that Cam Ward doesn't have the proper mechanics to be accurate consistently in the NFL. Mike McCoy was asked about his footwork yesterday and said, look, that's not something that gets better overnight. And the truth is, sometimes for quarterbacks, it's something that just doesn't get better. It is possible that Cam Ward still does not recognize the speed of NFL defenses. And because of that, he holds on to the ball too long because he thinks he can make something happen. That worked for him at times at Miami, playing ACC defenses, but this is the AFC, not the ACC. This week, the other team has Derwin James. You don't find players like that constantly when you're playing at Miami. And if you think you're going to be honest, then you have to admit those negative things about Cam Ward the same way you get excited about the positive things. You have to admit that Cam Ward's got things in his game, regardless of how stupid his coach is, regardless of how shitty his team is. Cam Ward has things in his game he needs to clean up. And it is not fair to assume, as much as fans love to do this, it is not fair to assume that these things just will get cleaned up. I talked about that when it came to Will Levis. And I remember a play specifically in Will Levis's rookie year. Levis rolled to the left. There were two Texan defenders with two Titans receivers. The Titans receivers were DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks. Both Texans defenders went with DeAndre Hopkins, and Treylon Burks was running down the field wide open. Levis had time. All he had to do was lift his head and look up. Instead, feeling heat, which wasn't even really there, Levis fired the ball into double coverage for Hopkins, his favorite target, and it was intercepted. Again, if Levis just looks up and he sees Treylon Burks running free down the field, he throws the ball down the sideline. It's probably a touchdown, assuming Burks catches the ball, which for Burks is a strong assumption to make. And I kept saying during the offseason, the real hallmark of growth for Will Levis will be in that moment, this upcoming season, does the game slow down for Levis? The players don't get slower, but the game itself slows down for the quarterback. And if it does slow down, and if he does know that he has a second, and he can see it before it happens, and he does breathe it, and he sees Burks running open down the field, touchdown. If not, you're not going to get any better. And a lot of people just want to assume, well, that's my quarterback, and my quarterback will improve, and my quarterback will get better, and you will see. And I think it's fair to say that Will Levis didn't improve from year one to year two. Again, for whatever reason. Same thing with Cam. Do we just assume his mechanics are going to get better? Because if his mechanics don't get better, he's not going to be an accurate passer. And if you're not an accurate passer in the NFL, you ain't going to be Drew Brees. So when people tell me like, hey, Cam, again, that tweet, everybody thinks that Cam's going to be a quarterback one now. What's your definition for quarterback one? Like somebody that starts in the league? Kyler Murray starts in the league. Again, you can sign a QB1. You can get that yourself. You can just sign it every offseason. There's a Daniel Jones. There's a Sam Darnold. There's a Baker Mayfield. Every year, there's one of those guys. You can just go get that guy. Next year, if you want Kyler Murray, you probably can get Kyler Murray. When I think of QB1, I think of the two guys that are going to be playing quarterback in Buffalo this weekend. What has Cam Ward done to make you think he's going to be one of those guys? And then there are the stats. There's the feelings and there's the stats. I always get told when it comes to Cam versus Sam that Sam Darnold wouldn't be good with the Titans. At first, I was told that it was only because of Minnesota that Sam Darnold was any good, and that it was only because of their great coach and great receivers, and that he was going to go somewhere else and he was going to turn back into a pumpkin because he's really not that good. And now that that narrative has been disproven, it's now that he wouldn't be as good here as he is in Seattle. Fine. Fair. I think the reason that he wouldn't be as good here as he was in Seattle is because the people running the team here are idiots. But I digress. If Sam Darnold was the quarterback of the Titans, would they be this bad? Well, my feeling tells me I know. But the stats right now say that Cam Ward has a QBR of 25.7. That is 33rd in the NFL. Cam has a Pro Football Focus grade. Again, not everything, but a Pro Football Focus grade of 57.8. That's 34th in the NFL. He is, according to the numbers, the worst full-time starting quarterback in the NFL. Right now, he has 10 big-time throws versus 8 turnover-worthy plays. And not only that, Cam Ward hasn't done anything to cement his status as the top quarterback in his own draft class so far. Jackson Dart was taken in the same class. He has a PFF grade 10 points higher. His QBR is 35 points higher and is 14th in the NFL. So again, I keep asking, you tell me, Cam has got more believers now that he's QB1 than ever before, with the exception of Jared Stillman. Again, by what metric? Because this is telling me Cam is QB 33 or QB 34. And again, you can go sign that every year in free agency. Every year in free agency, there is a Ryan Fitzpatrick who is out there. Every year in free agency, there is a quarterback that a lousy organization and a dumb franchise is given up on because they think they're so much better, and Ryan Tannehill gets dealt for a 4th-round pick. I understand wanting to believe that Cam is QB1. I understand having a hope that Cam Ward can be an elite quarterback in the NFL. And I understand wanting to believe these things because that feels like the safest way out for the Titans. But I'm trying to be as fair and non-biased as possible. What has Cam Ward done that says that guy is going to be a franchise quarterback? And don't do well, Peyton Manning had a tough year. Again, I'm asking you, what have you seen that makes you think that he's going to be Peyton Manning? Well, Drake May, his first year, who's going to be the offensive coordinator of the Titans next year? Is it going to be Josh McDaniels? Also, again, comparing the two, and I know we don't like stats because the stats tell us things we don't want to hear. Drake May's QBR last year was 55. It was 30 points higher than Cam Ward's QBR. And that was on a terrible team. And Drake May's actually younger than Cam Ward. So I understand wanting to believe, Howie, that Cam Ward is QB1. And I understand wanting to believe that Cam Ward has had a nice rookie season. I understand wanting to believe that. But wanting to believe it and it being true, well, those are two totally different things. So that's the second thing. Okay, can we get to the fun story? The LSU fiasco of a press conference yesterday. Can we get to this? So we've got to get to the LSU fiasco because it is hilarious. So the governor of Louisiana holds a press conference yesterday, and he says, this is Jeff Landry, that the athletic director, Scott Woodward, is not going to pick the next head coach at LSU. Take a look.
I can tell you right now, Scott Woodward is not selecting the next coach. Hell, I'll let Donald Trump select it before I let him do it. I don't know, but the Board of Supervisors is going to come up with a committee, and they're going to go find us a coach.
Amazing. Oh, it was great. And so then the governor blamed the athletic director for something that technically wasn't his fault when talking about the coaching buyouts. Here's what he said about the buyouts and the fiscal responsibility. And he puts the Jimbo Fisher extension at Texas A&M on Scott Woodward, which technically is not true. Woodward hired Jimbo to A&M. Ross Bjork, who's now the Ohio State AD, is the one who gave Jimbo that contract. But here's what Jeff Landry, the governor of Louisiana, said about the buyouts.
We are not going down a failed path. And I wanted to tell you something. This is a pattern. The guy that's here now that wrote that contract cost Texas A&M $70-something million. Right now, we got a $53 million liability. We are not doing that again.
Okay. So again, he blames the athletic director for something he didn't do that technically wasn't his fault. Then he says they'll let some board pick the coach, and the board head yesterday was asked about it. He said he had no idea. He's like, well, we'll go try to find the best coach for LSU. Go Tigers. I mean, this is hilarious. And then the governor didn't stop there. He launched into a rant about college football and the agents that represent the coaches in college football and how the NCAA needs to step up. And again, everybody loves to tell other people what to do. You're the governor. You don't like it? Pass laws. But it's all funny because LSU's not my school. And Jeff Landry is not my governor. And I did have my fun with this yesterday. I texted Caroline and I said Lou Holtz is going to be the next coach at LSU. But I do have to say something when it comes to old Jeffrey in Louisiana that I do think we need to discuss. He's not really wrong about the contracts and the buyouts that we are giving college football coaches nowadays. Because this is some nonsensical behavior. $50 million to tell Brian Kelly to pack his shit? Was Brian Kelly really that good at Notre Dame? So let's pretend that we have LSU's list in front of us. And Braden was on the show yesterday, and Braden said before they go to Kiffin, which I thought Kiffin was kind of their top choice, top target the whole time. Before they go to Kiffin, they want to take a big swing at a Dan Lanning. They want to take a big swing at a Marcus Freeman. Then maybe Lane Kiffin. So let's pretend to have LSU's list in front of us. Number 1, Dan Lanning. Number 2, Marcus Freeman. Number 3, Lane Kiffin. Number 4, let's say Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom should be the safe pick in all of this. He's a good coach at Louisville. He's not a great coach. He hasn't won a national title. He hasn't been to the college football playoff, but he's a good coach. If Florida hired him, if LSU hired him, if Penn State hired him, the media would applaud the hire. The fans would get on board with it. And so you can live with Jeff Brom. That's your 4th choice. Here's the problem with what the governor's bringing up about not wanting to give a contract with a huge buyout. All of those guys already have jobs. They already have good jobs. And they already make decent money. Some, like Dan Lanning, who makes over $10 million, makes more than Jeff Brom, who makes over $6 million. But all of them are probably going to get some form of a raise to stay at their current jobs, which means in order to get them to LSU, you have to pay them the kind of money and give them the kind of security with that money if things go off the rails for them to feel incredibly, fairly compensated for leaving their current post. And if you're not willing to give a big buyout because you think it's ridiculous that you have to pay $50 million for Brian Kelly, which it is, then you're not going to get one of those coaches. Dan Lanning is not going to leave Oregon, where they love him and they pay him a fortune and they give him everything he wants. He is not going to leave Oregon to go to LSU without the assurance that if things go off the rails, if the governor loses his mind, if the AD gets fired, if the board, that I'm getting paid for that. So I believe the crazy governor does bring up a good point that in the arms of college sports, we overrate these coaches and give them contracts and give them buyouts that you don't necessarily have to give for the performance that you would expect or should expect to be rendered in return. I mean, you know what's crazy? Dan Lanning, Marcus Freeman, Lane Kiffin, Jeff Brom, the guys LSU, they want them. They have a combined zero national championships. Lanning is 0-1 in the playoffs. Lane didn't go last year to the playoffs because he lost to Kentucky at home. And Jeff Brom didn't go to the playoffs 2 years ago, in part because he lost to Kentucky at home and he lost to Pittsburgh on the road. If you pay a 9-3 coach the kind of money that says, this is our 12-0 national championship winning coach, the reality is you just bought a 9-3 coach. James Franklin, who LSU would hold their noses at and say, we don't want him, he got fired. James Franklin was more successful at Penn State than Jeff Brom has ever been at Purdue and at Louisville. You want to know what bowl games Jeff Brom has been to as Louisville's coach? He's been to the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl and the Holiday Bowl. James Franklin was in the national semifinal a year ago. So, again, you can overrate these coaches all you want. Lane Kiffin's never been to the playoff. And you can give them these big contracts because you can get a Woody in your pants for Lane Kiffin to say, oh, my God, could you imagine Lane here at LSU? But at the end of the day, Lane's a 9-3 coach. And that's what you would be buying. But in order to get Lane to leave Ole Miss, where Lane's making a fortune and they're going to give Lane a new contract extension, you're going to have to give Lane an even bigger fortune. And with that bigger fortune comes a bigger buyout. So if you've decided we're not going to do the buyout, then you're not going to get Lane Kiffin. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Louisville looking at Jeff Brom because his name's going to come up. I had him on the carousel yesterday going to Penn State. I am okay with Louisville looking at Jeff Brom and saying, dude, you're an 8-4 coach. We're paying you $6 million. Somebody wants to offer you 10. We'll give you 8. But we're not going to give you more because at the end of the day, you're still an 8-4 coach. And if I wanted an 8-4 coach, I can go get an 8-4 coach. Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati, he was our previous coach. He can get you to 8-4. I can go get James Franklin. Penn State can pay you, and then Penn State can pay my coach because I'll go get James Franklin and pay James Franklin what I was paying you, and then Penn State pays him the rest. And what's the one school in the last 10 years that probably had the wherewithal to be able to overextend themselves for a coach who had been successful at that job, probably could have kept that coach if they wanted to, and they said, yeah, no, we're not overextending ourselves for a coach? I would say that's Notre Dame, who when Brian Kelly came to them and said, here's the offer from LSU, Notre Dame said, goodbye. Nice knowing you. Do you think Notre Dame regrets it? So I get that press conference was hilarious. And I thought it was a very damaging press conference for LSU yesterday because everybody went into the day thinking that LSU was going to hire an LSU coach the way LSU hires LSU coaches, which is the George Steinbrenner New York Yankee way. We'll give you everything you need. We'll compensate you fairly, but you better win the World Series. And if you don't win the World Series, you're out. That's what we all thought LSU was going to be. Instead, we've got the Mad Dog Russo of governors telling people,
we are not going down a failed path. And I wanted to tell you something. This is a pattern. The guy that's here now that wrote that contract cost Texas A&M $70-something million. Right now, we got a $53 million liability. We are not doing that again.
So he's going to tell you, we are not going down the failed path. Well, you're not getting Dan Lanning if that's going to be the way you do it. Again, we went into yesterday thinking LSU was going to take some big swings. And now we're told that they want to hire a coach and compensate him fairly and have an incentive program so they can tell that coach, hey, if it doesn't work out, then you know what, coach? Sorry about your luck, but we're moving on and we're not going to pay a big buyout. But if you do well, then we'll pay you a bunch of money. That's great, but that won't get you Lane Kiffin. That won't get you Dan Lanning. That won't get you Marcus Freeman. That's not going to get you Jeff Brom. So, because we do not have a Friday show this week, it is time to kick it in a little early for the Thursday night sermon. That's right. You know, I absolutely love the Thursday night sermon that kicks off the week, as we always seem to get excited about Thursday night football. Have you seen the Thursday night football game this week? I will say it was a little disappointing. But with that, it is time for the Thursday night sermon. Number one, Ravens-Dolphins this week to start us off. The NFL, in my opinion, has to absolutely hammer the Baltimore Ravens for the lying that they did last week on the injury report. If I was the commissioner of the NFL, I would suspend John Harbaugh for 6 games, and I would take the Ravens' second-round pick in this year's draft. And I think I'm being nice to the Ravens. In general, I would say take a first-round pick. But I'm going to say take a second-round pick because it looks like the Ravens' first-round pick might be number 6 overall. But the NFL cannot, and it's not their fault what happened with the NBA, but the NFL cannot have anybody thinking the games are rigged. And when Lamar Jackson's practice status is lied about to the extent that it swings the line as much as it did on Friday and over the weekend, you've got a problem. The optics there are not very good. And instead of saying, hey, I lied on the injury report, I should take my medicine, and we won't do it again, I promise, John Harbaugh pretended like he has nothing to do with the releasing of injury information. You're the NFL. You may not be a gambling entity, but your sport is propelled and fueled because of the gambling entities, both legally and illegally. And you cannot have anybody looking at your game thinking that any element of it is fixed or is cheated or is lied about. The GM used to tell me, when you fix games, when people lose the trust of the league, when people lose the trust of the game, you become pro wrestling. I don't think the NFL's rigged. I don't think most people think that. I don't think the NFL's rigged for the Chiefs, though we will see how the officials call the game on Sunday. But I also am aware of the optics that the NBA helped show last week, and I would say the Ravens need to be punished appropriately. Can I get an amen? So can I ask a question of the television channels and the television networks? And all I ask is, when is TV going to admit that the Minnesota Vikings absolutely blew it this offseason with their quarterback position? Having Sam Darnold with a 14-win season, entering his age 28 year, and letting him walk for J.J. McCarthy. Again, I talked about this at length. Kevin O'Connell thought, I am the reason that Sam Darnold was successful. And TV said, he is the reason that Sam Darnold is successful. And they just gave all the blame for what happened at the end of the year to Sam Darnold and all of the credit for everything else to Kevin O'Connell. And here are the Minnesota Vikings with reports starting to come out that Kevin O'Connell may be losing the locker room with this sentiment that they are going to put J.J. McCarthy out there after a soft benching and they'll see what they have in him. This is after having to watch Carson Wentz play football because Kevin O'Connell was so arrogant and thought so highly of himself that instead of keeping around Sam Darnold or paying the money for Daniel Jones, he decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to trade for Sam Howell, and I will coach him. J.J. McCarthy, we're going to draft him, and I will coach him. And yet when I watch these games that the Vikings play in primetime, because Sam Darnold won so many games last year that they're putting the Vikings on in primetime, all I ever hear are the commentators talk about how great of a coaching guru Kevin O'Connell is, how he's a quarterback whisperer. Well, now that we have some more results, can we start to say, maybe not as smart as we thought? Can I get an amen? How about the Detroit Lions? They locked up Aiden Hutchinson to a $180 million contract. And I believe Aiden Hutchinson is going to see every penny of that $180 million. I think that's a real contract, and I think that's real money, and I think he's going to earn it. And the Lions have become the model, have they not, for draft, develop, and retain. They drafted Aiden Hutchinson and signed him. They drafted Penei Sewell and they signed him. They drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown and signed him. And they're going to pay after drafting Jahmyr Gibbs in a couple of years. But that doesn't get me over the big question I have to ask when it comes to the Detroit Lions, which is, with all these great draft picks they've made over the years, and with all the money they've spent on guys like St. Brown and Sewell and now Hutchinson and the great Sam Laporta they drafted, and David Montgomery in the backfield to go along with Gibbs. Can you win the Super Bowl with Jared Goff as your quarterback? I know you can get to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff as your quarterback because I saw Jared Goff, albeit aided by the referees, get to a Super Bowl. I know you can get the number 1 seed because I saw the Lions last year get the number 1 seed with Jared Goff as their quarterback. I know you can get to the NFC title game and have a really damn good shot to win it because I saw Jared Goff go on the road to San Francisco and almost win that NFC title game. And I'll give the Lions credit because without Aaron Glenn and without Ben Johnson, they haven't seemed to miss a beat. But can you win the Super Bowl with Jared Goff? And that's the frustrating part in this league. If you don't have Mahomes, if you don't have Allen, if you don't have Burrow, if you don't have Lamar, and even if you do have Lamar, there are questions of, can you win the big one? Teams like Justin Herbert and the Chargers, or Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, or CJ Stroud of the Texans right now believe they can win a Super Bowl with those guys. But guess what? The Rams thought they could win a Super Bowl when they gave Jared Goff the largest contract in the history of the NFL at the time. But I still ask, with all that money spent, with all that winning, with draft developer retained, can you win the whole thing with Jared Goff? Can I get an amen? And how about Myles Garrett? 5 sacks last week, and the Browns still got pummeled because they don't have an offense and they don't have a quarterback. Poor Jim Schwartz. But let me tell you who I have no sympathy for when it comes to this mess that is the Cleveland Browns. I have no sympathy for Myles Garrett. And I understand it must be frustrating to be the best in the world at what you do on a year in and year out basis. And to know that ultimately it doesn't matter because the impulsive owner went in over his skis and signed a sexual predator to play quarterback, allegedly, a sexual predator to play quarterback who hasn't been healthy. And when he has been healthy, he hasn't been very good. But Myles Garrett had sympathy last year when he demanded a trade, saying, I'd like to win the Super Bowl. And so I'd like to leave this shithole of an organization, and I'd like to go somewhere where I actually have a chance to compete. But Myles Garrett, when presented with the $40 million contract, decided, you know what? I'll sign up for more of this shithole. He knew what he was getting himself into when he signed on the dotted line. Literally. So I have no sympathy for Myles Garrett, who is wasting away his career as a pass rusher the same way Joe Thomas wasted away his Hall of Fame career as a left tackle with the lifeless Cleveland Browns. That was a choice you made. And I am not going to feel bad for you for choices you made when you knew better. Can I get an amen? And how about the game of the week this week? It's the game of the week every year. It's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, and it is the meaningless regular season game the two sides play. Now, this year seems to be a little different because in years past, when building out the AFC, it's always been Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, maybe a little Cincinnati here or there, maybe a little Tennessee back when the Titans were well run. But for the most part, it's been the Allen versus Mahomes game every year. And there's always been some belief that when it comes to this game, that the winner will have the upper hand because the playoff game will be played where the winner wins the game. And that sounds great. But the truth is, it feels to me like Buffalo wins the regular season games every year, and Kansas City goes and wins the playoff game every year. And I don't know why I'd expect any different. But I will say, this game's actually kind of tricky because instead of playing for first place, neither of these teams right now are in first place in their division. Kansas City is 5-3. That matches the Chargers and is behind the Broncos, who are 6-2. Also, I feel pretty good about the Chargers' chances of winning their game this week. Buffalo's 5-2. They're behind the great Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots, who sit up top at 6-2. It's a good game, but it's not the end-all, be-all that CBS seems to always make it out to be, where they take their whole pregame show there and they make it into some sort of spectacle. And it'll get good ratings because those teams always get good ratings. But it's not that big of a game. It's a big game, but it's not that big of a game. Can I get a name? And finally, how about them Blue Jays? That's right. It's not over yet. But the Blue Jays beat the Dodgers' number one starter, Blake Snell, with 22-year-old Taylor Yasevich last night, who's been in the big leagues for what, 2 months? And the best part of the World Series has been to see really how competitive it's been, with both teams giving everything they've got, but just how good the best players in the world really are in the World Series. Shohei Ohtani, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and then the young upstarts like old Mr. Yasevich. Can I get a name? And that is our Thursday night sermon here on the program. But we're not done yet. Normally, Thursday night sermon usually wraps it up, but not this week, because we've got to get into 6-pack picks. That's right. It's crazy, because I actually thought last week we were going to have a good week. I think we're going to have a good week every week. Not a good week. 2-4. And now we are under 500 for the first time this year. We started the year off 5-1. And now we're under 500 for the first time this year at 23-25. So without further ado, let's get started with our picks this week. These were very, very easy games to go out and pick. And of course, we start with our college football picks. 11 o'clock, ABC, Vanderbilt on the road at Texas. I owe Joe Retro $20. I thought Vanderbilt would be favored. Texas is favored -2.5. The game opened at 1.5. They shifted in favor of Texas 2.5. 11 a.m. ABC. I'm torn on how I should pick this game, because on one hand, I want to keep rolling against Vanderbilt. I keep picking against Vanderbilt. I picked South Carolina to beat Vanderbilt. I picked Alabama to beat Vanderbilt, although I picked Vanderbilt to cover and they lost that one. I picked LSU to beat Vanderbilt. I picked Missouri to beat Vanderbilt. I want to pick Texas to beat Vanderbilt just to keep this energy. Hopefully Vanderbilt to win, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt goes on the road, and I think they beat Texas. And I think they go on the road and they beat Texas because I think their defense is better. And I think Texas's offense, in spite of all the talent and Arch Manning and everything else, is very, very inefficient. I think Vanderbilt will have enough offense. I think their defense wins the day. I'll go Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt wins 24-16. The night game, 6:30 ABC, Oklahoma at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 3.5-point favorite. They'll be wearing the black jerseys. I don't necessarily like that, but apparently their fans do, so more power to them. I'm taking Tennessee -3.5. I think Tennessee wins this game. I'll go something like 27-20. But I just don't think Oklahoma's very good. I think Oklahoma won a couple of games early. They beat Michigan early in the season. People started to think they were good, started to think John Mateer was good. And I know Mateer got hurt, but they've won the games they should win. They have not won games, with the exception of Texas. They have not won games that they shouldn't have won. So for this, Tennessee, I think they cover easily. Give me them -3.5. Holy crap. What a week NFL slate we have. San Francisco at the Giants, noon CBS. San Francisco is a 2.5-point favorite. I'll take the 49ers. And I took the 49ers last week, and they went on the road, and they got beat by the Texans. And I didn't necessarily like the way Mac Jones played. And they've got holes on defense that they're trying to patch up here and there. But I think there was something spiritual that the Giants lost when Cam Skattebo broke his ankle. Skattebo's out. Malik Neighbors is out. It's really Jackson Dart all by himself. I'll take San Francisco. Give me the more established brand. San Francisco covers 2.5. The big game, the one that CBS will not let you forget that they have, the Chiefs and the Bills, 325. That game, CBS, Kansas City -2.5. I think Buffalo wins. Buffalo's at home. Buffalo wins the regular season game every year, loses the playoff game. I think they'll win the regular season game this year. I'll go Buffalo, and I think Buffalo wins 27-24 at the end of the game. They'll make a field goal. Give me Buffalo plus 2.5. Sunday Night Football. The Sam Chi's quarterback, Sam Darnold, at Washington, and Jaden Daniels, who is likely to play Seattle, is a 2.5-point favorite. I am going to take, how can I go against Sam Darnold in Seattle? I'm going to take Seattle. Washington has been all over the place this year, and I know they're going to get Jaden Daniels back, but Terry McLaurin is out. And Washington seems to me to be a team that got hot at the end of last year. They're solid, but they have issues. And Seattle seems to me to be a very good team with a quarterback who gets it. I'll go Seattle. I think they win outright. They are 2.5-point favorites. I think they win outright by more than a field goal. I'll take Seattle -2 at Washington. And the game of the week, the freest money, the Chargers. -9.5 at Tennessee, noon CBS. Lay the 9.5. I will not pick the Titans to cover another game this year. I do not think. The Chargers -9.5. I think that number opened at 8. I think this is going to be like every other game. It'll be close in the first half. Then it'll be a blowout in the second half. And then we'll just mercifully wait for it to end. Chargers big. I'll go Chargers 31, Tennessee 6. That's it for us. We are out of here. Have a great weekend. Again, no show tomorrow, post-game live. As soon as Titans-Chargers is over, go Blue Jays. Like and subscribe to Stillman & Company. Have a great weekend. We'll see everybody post-game live Sunday right here on the 440 Sports Network.